This is really just right side, left side. And in the case of the right lung versus left lung, you're going to have these different marked areas. Now, we already talked about how the fissures are different on the right side versus left. Which lung is larger?
The right side.
It's the right one is larger. And so it has more fissures. In this case, this first fissure you see is a horizontal fissure, and this one down here is the oblique. Those fissures on the right side separate the lung into superior, middle, and inferior lobes. Okay? Don't forget that if I open this up now, each of those lobes are going to get a secondary bronchi, right? We've already talked about that. Primary bronchi are going to go to each lung itself. So those are going to be the lobes on the right side. Let's go to the lobes on the left. It only has one fissure here, the oblique, and that gives me a superior and an inferior fissure. You can still see now the trachea, the larynx associated with this region, giving rise then to what I would like to call the bronchioles on this side. I'm going to take all this out so we can see those. When you look at the inside of the trachea, so all this blue down here is the trachea, okay? That trachea comes down, don't forget what's that branching point there is called the carina. That's where the cough reflex is generated right there in the middle. That gives rise into two individual branches. Those individual branches are known as primary bronchi. Those go to each lung. I have a right primary bronchi and a left primary bronchi. From there, I get further branches. Those are secondary bronchi. How many secondary bronchi does the right lung have?
3.
How many does the left lung have?
2.
2, good. And then does everybody see all this blue out here? Those are tertiary bronchi. Okay, that's as far as we go on this model. We can't go any further by actual or naked eye. Okay, so those are the only structures you need to know as far as bronchi is concerned. Except for this guy right here, this is portions of the diaphragm. Diaphragm, that big muscle that crosses over. I'll also ask you that on those big models too. Okay, so that's that model. When you carry on then with this guy.
No, you're fine.
This one right here deals with now a couple of things. We will look at the sagittal head for not only a few of our tonsils, but we'll also look at it for things like our concha and our oropharynx, or our pharynxes. So first things first, up here in the nasal cavity, we have our superior, middle, and inferior nasal concha. Okay, so those are labeled little a, little b, little c. Superior, middle, and inferior nasal concha. Those nasal concha will basically, for me, create for what we call the nasopharynx, right? That area, that tube that's in the back is nasopharynx. If I were to block off this portion between my two fingers, that's oropharynx, that same tube that goes down behind the mouth is called oropharynx. And then below that, along the larynx, is the laryngopharynx. Remember those? We've talked about those already. So nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx. I'll put tape on the practical with those marked. The whole area marked, and you'll just name it. We also see the pharyngeal tonsil right here. When I gave you this lecture, I kind of highlighted some of these, the auditory eustachian tube there. This is soft palate. This is hard palate. This is the tongue. Okay, some of these things shouldn't be too complicated. This is the lingual tonsil right here. This up front is the larynx or the trachea, and this one back here is esophagus. You can also see this little blue piece right here that's showing you the epiglottis. Okay, that little blue piece right there showing you the epiglottis. So those are pretty much the only things I would ask you from this model. Okay, I think that's it for respiratory.